Hi everybody and welcome to this Legion Tower Defense 2 video guide. Today is the second part of how to pick your mastermind role, this time for more experienced players and veterans. I would say you should use this guide instead of the first one if you're around platinum or higher. And of course, as soon as you reach the 2k ranks, this can still help you, but you might adapt a bit to more synergies to your own playstyle, and you should be able to be aware of your own role picking then, I think. Make sure to show by on Twitch if you want to see more content from myself. The link is down in the description, so let's just head right into it. The very first thing you want to do if you're picking your role is have a look at the Legion spells at first. This will already tell you in what type of game you are in and what kind of direction it will head to. So if there are super offensive spells like press the attack, overwork, giant snails, you're most likely receiving a big send on wave 11 or 12. So make sure to be able to cover those waves, have maybe a banana bunk in your role, a kingpin, Varks, other good units on these waves to be able to hold bigger sends, and be aware that especially the spells like overwork and giant snails are almost must picks, and if you don't pick them you will have a huge disadvantage. I would only not pick such spells, for example, if you have another comp like doppelganger with villain and this is stronger then, but in most cases these spells are just ruling the field, so make sure to be aware of that, to know that you maybe should pick them, and to know that the game is going to focus on mostly waves 11 and 12 for a big send. Spells number 2 is to prevent a big send on 11 with Alone, for example, or Sacrifice. Both of these spells can be really good if you didn't get a send for a long time and expect a send on 11. So make sure to not try to force the hardest send on 11 only if they're like really bad, even if they get a lot of more gold, because with Lone you can just buff up your value, and Sacrifice, maybe he's just sacrificing the biggest and worst unit on wave 11, for example, and placing an Haven out of nothing because he got a lot of gold then. So be aware of that, and that a lot of structure in the enemy's build can change after wave 10, and care for send on 11. The third category is the aura spells. If you already see that there are aura spells in game, you can always have a look, especially on your role, if there are units you can pair them with, for example Magician with violets, sorcerer with flowers, or vampire with butcher nightmare. So be aware of those spells, and now we're heading into 2 tactics how you pick your role. I think they're almost the same value. Maybe style number 2 will be a bit more on the higher elo side, but let's discuss both of them now. At very first, you want to see, are there any comms I have? For example, now I can see I have here Starcaller, which is a mana buffing unit with violets, and I could also do Starcaller with LODs. So this is a great synergy already, which is buffing the mana of my Lord of Death and of my Windhawk later Violet, because Windhawk has no mana, of course. So that's the very first thing. Look at comms. For example, Butcher Nightmare. Look at comms like Disciple with mana regeneration units like Violet or Great Boa. Look at comms like APS Mask or Leviathan Mask and stuff like that. Or for example AoE units like the Flower and Blue Aqua to buff that. Look at these comms, and if you have a really strong comp, they're like, if you have, okay, Leviathan PV, because PV is flying, that's not a big comp, but if you have Violet, Lord of Death, Leviathan and Wilshroom, for example, that's all flying units, you have a strong flying comp. And if you have something like that, you want to build around this. So in that particular role, for example, you want to take that comp. For example, let's take these 3 units here now, and then you kind of play around it. For example, okay, we know we need a tier 1 unit, so pick that. How do I get through the first few waves? This is Aqua Spirit here. and then we need some tank maybe for, yeah, maybe around, I would say 9 might be a bit of a problem yet. So we can take the Wanderer, and later if we're taking our reroll, we want to get another tank, because Wanderer is not the best tank you have at the moment. The rest is ranged units, and you want to have something strong for your Violet. So I would say in this situation you can pick something like that, play around that comp, and just get as good as you can in mid and late game. Of course, you should never choose a comp over a good early game in a situation where you have a really bad game instead. So if you have a really nice late game comp, but you have the shittiest role for early game, don't pick it. But if you have a good role for mid and late game and a decent or good role for early game, pick it. That's style number 1, how you can pick. Alright, style number 2 is the heavy aggressive early game push. With that style, you try to have a really strong early game where you can push tons of worker and just out income your enemy soon, and you can very quickly snowball into the game, and you have a at least decent mid game and the potential to go high in late game, but you mainly want to rely on your reroll a bit on the late game units. For example, we have a unit roll here. There might be better rolls out there, but I think that is one example where you can already see a lot what you should look for. At first, for myself, I really like the tier 3s for that type of role. If you might be someone who's preferring more tier 2 or tier 4 or just some other units than I do, that is completely fine. If you're able to push with the units you like the most, that is awesome. This style is mostly about pushing and not about specific units, as long as you can hold with them with undervalue, and if you're so familiar with them that you can manage to do that. For example, in that role type, I would pick Mask, these units, maybe even Sea Serpent, and then I have still one spot open. I could either go for another tier 1 unit to just pressure more, and because I could take the Looter for another opener, or I can take the Millennium, for example. I will explain both really quick, but I will have a bigger focus on that role. So here, for example, you can do a Mask Spirit start with 4 workers, or you can do Mask Windhawk start. You can either go greedy and push 5 workers here, or you can do it a bit more slowly and go 4 workers but push after the first Send Heart. So what I would, for example, do here is Mask via a Windhawk opener, get the False Maiden for wave 2, then you can just place some small arcane units for 3, and you would probably get a Send on 3 anyway. So you can push hard then and just shift the gold on 4 because you have good units on 4, and take the Violet for 5 then. Then you're pretty much safe at these waves. Just use the perfect value of Windhawk with Alpha Males and Lioness to buff them up to get an awesome strong Lioness. You can have some snipes with your Sea Serpents here. You have some splash addition to your Violet spells with the Millennium and a really nice tank for the split. Because you have a Mask split, you can split it around like the L in the wrong direction. Let the units run around here, and then the split will come and run up here into the Millennium. You will place it around here because it is range, it won't tank in front, so it will tank the split instead. And you will have a really strong comp, and you can have a really high pushing early game because you have awesome units that have great synergies already in early game, especially these two. You have Mask for some more AoE. Sea Serpent is a really nice damage dealer if you have good tank value, and a Gargoyle with its damage reduction is really strong as a tank in early game. So you have a lot of potential of high pushing with this role. Just maybe send a bit more income than usual to try to snowball even faster, and you will have a big shot on winning that early game with such a role. That is tactic number 2. You want to snowball in the early game, get tons of income, and just try to build up a lot of workers. You can push your enemy into the ground with that. The other alternative was taking the looter here, for example. Then there might be no need for mask, and you could take Millennium, but you could also take mask still. For example, now you could do the Windhawk looter start with the pack red, which is gaining a lot of Mythium even if the waves are short. This can give you a huge advantage as well, but of course you never know in the early game. To sum it up, let's go really quick through it. Very first point is have a look at the Legion spells. This is very important to see which Legion spell can fit to which units I have, which Legion spell can fit to the playstyle I have, and on which waves I try to cover my lane. For example, if there's overwork or giant snails, I have to try to cover wave 12s and 11 very hard. Tip number 2 and tactic number 1 is to try to build around a comp. You can see this in your initial roll and just try to build the early game around that, or maybe the mid game around that comp, depending on what type of comp you have. And strategy number 2 is make a super pressury early game. Try to snowball as good as you can in the early game. Have a good early and mid game, and then try to get even better late game units with your reroll. I hope that did help you. And if there are more questions, just ask me in the comments. Make sure to show by on my Twitch channel. I will stream a lot of times that time. And yeah, have a nice day and good luck in ranked.